Since the end of the Industrial Revolution, many people have started moving their lives indoors. And for the first time in history, more people live in cities than in rural areas. Trapped within tall buildings and large metropolitan cities, we often miss the vital connection to nature that humans are used to. Numerous studies have shown the physical and mental benefits of incorporating nature back into our daily lives, and Biophilic Design is helping to reintroduce the natural world to our built environment. At the Bullitt Center in Seattle, Washington, teams at the International Living Future Institute work to incorporate and certify biophilic design buildings around the globe.
Biophilic design is really about bringing the concept of love of life to our built environment. It's a design process that assumes people and nature are connected and not separate from each other. It's a design process that says that instead of sort of coming in and very quickly coming up with a design idea that's perhaps just based on the program or the function or the latest design trend, they take the time up front in the project to understand the depth of that community, the culture, the place. They look for cues, they really observe carefully, and they pay attention to all the nuances of that place.
The design phase really starts before pencil goes to paper. In fact, it starts before anyone's even at the table, because the design phase of biophilic design has to do with the site and the attributes of the site. You will want to have stakeholders such as designers, landscape architects, engineers, historians, and naturalists, biologists that can make sure that the site attributes are incorporated into the built environment. We will look beyond the site to the setting, the climate, the bioregion as well, so that if we have views of the mountains, if we can hear an adjacent river, we keep those in mind, we catalog that as well. In the end, when the project is done, a metric of a successful project would be that those plants and animals that occupy the site pre-development can occupy the site post-development. Materials, again, that starts on site as well. You will see stone, you will see the substrate there, you'll see soil, you'll see the plants, and ideally the animals there too, if you haven't scared them off. But you will catch colors, textures, and some of these materials can be incorporated into the architecture from a foundation standpoint, from a surface standpoint, from a pattern standpoint as well. So you'll want to incorporate these textures and these colors and these patterns that you see on site into the building itself. And so the materials that the structure is built out of reinforce the connection to place.
In the high desert region of Bend, Oregon, Al and a diverse team of specialists have created a stunning biophilic residence called Desert Rain.
One of our defining elements at Desert Rain is a curving wall that starts outside the building, courses through the building, and exits the building at the other end. This wall was used to define the open, bright, public, passive solar regions of the home from the quiet, contemplative, meditative side of the home. That wall itself, the surface, is either an indigenous stucco recipe from the state of Oregon or an American clay that's very similar to that stucco. In both cases, it's got a manzanita bark color and is reminiscent of sandstone. And that element is 8 feet tall, so it's an imposing element, architectural element. And it guides you to the entrance of the building, guides you through the building, and then defines the spaces inside the building too. In particular, the roof overhangs were designed in a manner that allows us to capture as much of the winter sun as possible and flood that through the building, warming the concrete floor, putting smiles on the occupants' faces in the dead of winter. But in the summertime, those same overhangs prevent direct sunlight from hitting the glazing on Desert Rain. It's almost as if we're sitting beneath a shade tree in the summertime. Gentle breezes blowing through. Even, again, on a 90-degree day, it's quite comfortable inside Desert Rain. So much so that we did not incorporate mechanical air conditioning. From a design perspective, I often use the term authentic when we speak of materials. So while from an authenticity standpoint, we would encourage the use of the real wood, not a substitute wood or an artificial wood. And that's another way the materials can connect the occupants and the visitors to place.
In places such as the Tuhoe Cultural Centre in New Zealand and the Greenpoint project in British Columbia, biophilic design is used to celebrate the culture and craft of Indigenous peoples. Using materials and labor from the site can be a great way to reinforce the connections between people and place. On Vancouver Island, Greenpoint architect Kenneth Chewy has helped restore the First Nation site using biophilic design principles.
During our design process, we engaged a number of different consultants, from biologists to ecologists, as well as archaeologists and First Nations consultants. We worked very closely with permaculture consultants and landscape architects. As a collaborative group, we came up with a strategy of rewilding the ecosystem. One of the critical aspects of our design process was really exploring biophilia and what biophilia meant to the site. We engaged in multiple biophilic charrettes, and what we really discovered is that biophilia should be really about the human senses. One day after a storm, I walked out on a beach and there were 4 logs that had washed up. And that was really interesting because I realized that our design of our building, which was inspired by rural architecture and the Indigenous buildings of the First Nations community, our original architectural plan had 4 columns. Nature that day gave us 4 logs that washed up on shore. And what would be considered industrial waste, we repurposed that as part of the architecture. And we located those columns inspired by how the trees face the direction of the sun at a specific angle to mimic nature. And to me, that's one of the strongest biophilic elements in the design of the building.
Well, a big piece of biophilic design is about that connection to the community and to the culture. And so, during construction, I've seen really successful approaches that have included the community and that have celebrated the culture either through work training programs or ways to really celebrate people's craft, and in a way that perhaps, contracting hasn't really been celebrated typically. Typically it's go in, quickly get the job done, get paid, move to the next one. So what I see with biophilic buildings is that even the process of construction is iterative, it's interactive, and it's also a celebration of taking more time and craft on actually creating the building. Some of my favorite statistics about the value of biophilic design are that after people spend just 1 hour in nature, they are 20% more productive. You see that play out too in test scores for school kids, and you also see it play out in hospital rooms that have daylight. You see a reduction in painkillers and you see a reduction in the length of stay. But what they also indicate is that there's something that's inherent in that celebration of the relationship between people and nature that's allowing people to be better versions of themselves. And so there's kind of a twofold message in those statistics that I really like. The Khoo Teck Puat Hospital in Singapore is really a unique approach to healthcare. What the Khoo Teck Puat Hospital did is look at all the parts of a hospital that don't have to be perfectly sterile and with no windows and privacy issues and functional issues, and take all the others like patient waiting rooms or outpatient rooms where you're just getting your blood drawn, and how you kind of take that kind of program and allow it to be naturally ventilated, infiltrated with nature, have healing gardens, and look at that connection to outside as a healing opportunity. You know, it's a pretty unique approach to healthcare, and I think it's one that has a lot of potential to understand how we could have faster healing rates, you know, less reliance on pain medication, and you know, really have healthier hospitals at the end of the day. Ultimately, this is about creating healthy environments for people, but it's also about creating healthy ecosystems. I don't believe you can really, you know, only have a healthy place for people without having a healthy ecosystem, a healthy community, a healthy culture. So, you know, I think the metrics of success are not just about the occupants, but that information is really crucial to have.
From homes in the high desert of Oregon to modern hospitals in Singapore, buildings that incorporate biophilic design help reconnect humans with the natural world. Designing with renewable sources of light and heat reduce impacts on the local ecosystem, and using sustainable materials can lower a building's environmental costs. For a building to be truly biophilic, it must also perform like nature. When integrated successfully into our built environment, biophilic design can provide tremendous benefits for occupants, from increased productivity and employee happiness to improved health and test scores for youth.
Biophilic design gives us an opportunity to reconnect with nature. It, in many ways, makes us whole as human beings.
For more information about biophilic design and sustainable buildings, visit living-future.org.